Hi guys, welcome to our Sunday instalment. Today we've got a question from Serena and she asks what our reactions were to Charlotte's diagnosis. This would be the first diagnosis in July 2013, I assume. We can, in addition, talk about her diagnosis of glioblastoma in a different video because it's a bit of a rawer subject. So I think we'll save that one for later.
This week has been much the same as any other week. It does seem to be getting harder for some reason. I do take comfort in the fact that I go and see her twice a day up on the downs and take fresh flowers every other day. But it doesn't get any easier, that I can say to people, and I have several people have said to me time heals. Well, I think losing a child it's a very different experience, and thankfully, I suppose it's a very small, unique club that I'm in, I'm pleased to say, for everybody else, but it does very much change your perspective on everything. On a good piece of news, Miles has managed to get himself a temporary job, which is great, which he'll be starting tomorrow, so I'm very pleased about that. Going back to the cancer diagnosis, she'd been having headaches. I will go into this in more detail at some point, but sort of briefly, she had been having quite severe headaches, and she had actually been to the doctor on several occasions and actually said to the doctor, "I've got a brain tumour," to which he said, "Don't be so ridiculous, of course you haven't got any symptoms." And in fact, both Miles and I sort of said, "You can't have a brain tumour, you haven't got any of the normal symptoms, like you think, well, headache being sick." Well, obviously she had a headache but wasn't being sick, etc. Anyway, we had gone and we'd ended up at the hospital. We went on a Monday to see the doctor, and he sent her away and said it's a migraine, and later that night we ended back up in the hospital because they thought that she might actually have meningitis, so we were ambulanced up there, and we'd stayed overnight, and we got discharged because they said again nothing was wrong. And the following afternoon, on the Tuesday, she phoned me at work and said, "I'm really not at all well, I'm feeling very, very poorly." So I said, "Well, I'm going to take you back up to the hospital." So I went back up to the hospital, and this doctor looked behind her eyes, and I have to bear in mind I was very naive about all this, it didn't really mean much to me, and she said there seems to be a bit of pressure behind the eye. I knew that there was something obviously a bit amiss there, and then she actually said to us, "Would you like to go to Boots Vision Express? Or I could see whether I could get you booked in downstairs." Well, it was a no-brainer. I thought, maybe the one downstairs. However, Charlotte subsequently said to me, had it been left to her own devices, she would have gone to Boots or Vision Express, and things could have been very, very different that particular week to the outcome we had. Yeah, there was a build-up of pressure, so they kept her in the view of maybe doing a lumbar puncture without really knowing too much what was going on. So then they decided to give her an MRI scan, which they did on the Thursday morning, and again we weren't really too sort of worried about anything. We actually hadn't even thought about cancer or brain tumours, we hadn't thought of that. Charlotte had, but we hadn't. And 4 o'clock that very, very, very hot summer's afternoon, I remember it because it was the night of prom, it was boiling in the hospital, and we were taken into, my husband and I, into a side room with several women doctors sitting there. And they said, "Yes, we have found something on the brain. It looks like a tumour from what we can see, but we don't know what type it is or anything else." Your whole world falls apart. You don't know what to do. You don't know where to turn. Tumour, cancer, death. That's the first thing. And I sobbed and sobbed. And I went back to the room where Charlotte was sitting on the bed, and she could see I'd been crying, and she said to me, "I told you." I said, "Didn't I? I had a brain tumour," and nobody believed me. And then they were worried that it might have gone on the spine. She said to me, "I don't think it will have gone on the spine." So I said, "No, I don't either. I'm sure it hasn't." You have to remember at this point, we were very ignorant, very, very ignorant of anything to do with brain tumours. We knew nothing about anything. And so we'd have these sort of very laid-back conversations without really thinking about the consequences of it. And then it was discovered that yes, she did have it down her spine as well. We were just numb. All of us were numb. There was nothing they could immediately do. I made lots of frantic phone calls to people, and people couldn't believe it, and I just said, "It's a tumour, what type, don't know, but it sounds awful." And to be honest, I really thought she'd sort of die the next day. Thank goodness she didn't, but that's your initial reaction to it. And then we had another problem with my father-in-law. Had his operation on his heart had gone drastically wrong. So my husband was going from cardiology to the children's unit, just a corridor or two away. And then we didn't know, Miles was in Benicasm at the time, and we didn't know what to do. And half of me thought, do I tell him and ruin his holiday? There's nothing much he can do. And I thought, well, he may not forgive me if I don't. So we did have to phone him up, and Miles will tell you what happened with his story on that particular afternoon.
On that particular afternoon, Benicassim being in Spain, we were there for the festival. We'd been to Barcelona beforehand, and the train journey from Barcelona to Benicassim is about 2.5 hours. And it was about 5, must have been 5 because it was 4 here. And we were kind of preparing for the evening, and we were down at the beach, which was quite a long trek from the campsite, which was more in the kind of hills. And obviously Dad phoned me and said that Charlotte was ill and what was wrong with her. So then I walked back to the campsite with a very close friend of mine. When I got there, two of my other very close friends had packed all my bags and everything, which was really, really helpful. I was given very generously quite a lot of money by friends to get back, which I really did need because I didn't have much on me. I'd already maxed out the withdrawal from the ATM machines. So I got literally the last train back from, I think it was a 9:30 train I got back to Barcelona, which was a horrendous journey because it was absolutely sweltering. It was hot in England, it was boiling in Spain. So I got that train, and when I got to Barcelona it was 12 at night. So I got a McDonald's, then as soon as I sat down with Coca-Cola, I hate Coca-Cola, that's how thirsty I was, train station closed. So I was on my own in the middle of Barcelona at about 12 at night with maybe €1,000 on me. So I was obviously in a very vulnerable position. So I phoned my dad and I said, what are the liveries on the cabs, what the legitimate cabs look like. So I got a taxi from Barcelona station to El Prat airport, main airport in Barcelona. And when I got there, I couldn't find a way into the airport at all. I actually thought for some reason it was closed. I eventually got into there. It was like 1 or 2 in the morning. I had to sleep kind of in a toilet cubicle because sleeping in the airport is prohibited. So I did that, and I did that to protect myself from getting mugged if I was asleep because I had all this money on me. So I did that. I woke up and had a horrendous time trying to negotiate the airport and negotiate with the airport staff about trying to get an early ticket home, and that took about 8 hours of me just kind of sitting there waiting for someone who had the relevant power to change the ticket to finally change the ticket. That cost about €180.
But did you not? You had to try and explain.
I had to try and explain it, and obviously I
Charlotte
don't speak Spanish. It's probably my weakest language. I don't speak any Spanish. So I had to kind of explain all that. So I got home, got the flight from Barcelona back to Gatwick, and I got back at about 4 in the afternoon. So it took me a total of 24 hours of constant travelling to actually get back, but I made it back. Luckily, as my friends may remember, I was quite a pedant with the metro stations, and I did manage to memorise quite a lot of the metro stations in Barcelona, which was massively helpful because I would never have been able to get to that airport otherwise. So yeah, no, it was a difficult journey back, but it was obviously one I felt I had to make. But these are the things that I suppose don't necessarily filter into people's consciousness about cancer and its effects, and indeed the effect of any long-term illness and diagnosis, is the fact that it can be a logistical nightmare. I mean, if you live in Australia, for example, trying to get back here will cost you thousands of pounds firstly, and you might not be able to, you don't know. And it's just an incredibly difficult means of trying to travel back in a lot of cases, I think. So I think it's something I'm quite keen to kind of raise a bit of awareness of, and I don't know how anyone will go about that, but I just think it's important that when people are given this really, really bad news and they're already in a frantic state, like getting yourself together, it can be really difficult. And luckily I had like 20 of my friends there, which was really, really helpful. So I was in a bit of a fortunate position. I wasn't too far away from England anyway.
And I think that Friday, as soon as you came back, I remember it was very hot here, but you showered and then we went straight up to the hospital. We saw Charlotte, and then Miles needed to clear his head a bit, and I remember we had quite a walk because the hospital is on the seafront, and so we had quite a long walk. And what was strange, the next day there wasn't really much else they could do, and we hadn't seen any specialists. So what was a bit strange, we were, I think it was, I'm fairly certain it was on the Friday evening or maybe the Saturday morning when we came home. But we came back and I remember she wanted to go looking for fish, and we went up to a garden centre and looked at fish. But what was so strange, it was like nothing had happened.
We've got the photo of that actually. I can overlay that day. We have that photo you took.
Yeah, and it was very strange because it was almost, this is quite normal. But it wasn't, because we were devastated. I think you go into this huge, you're just shell-shocked. You can't believe that it's actually happening. And I mean, obviously things progressed and got an awful lot worse before they got better. But we'll try and cover some of these other questions which people have asked us. The one we'd like to do next Sunday, which is an incredibly important one, I think it is about the carers. Mm-hmm. And how we managed to do that, and somebody's asked us whether we'd kindly do that, and of course we will.
I know you and I have different kind of areas we want to tackle in terms of raising awareness. You obviously want to go for glioblastoma, and I want to kind of go down the practitioner medical route on that. And I also think it's really important to raise awareness of caregivers, because I'm sure we've all heard about young carers and they're people that get much neglected by the news. There were three of us, and we were all able-bodied, and Charlotte, she wasn't the heaviest. She was heavier than she was, but trying to move someone around a house like that is just absolutely horrendous. All the door frames are all chipped now. So you hear about these 12, 13-year-old young kids who are caring for their parents. I mean, that must be incredibly tough. So that's something that I want to kind of push towards raising awareness of too.
Yeah, and I want to look at, sort of as Miles said, I've started to try and do quite a bit of research on glioblastoma, etc., and also on our Facebook page. As I said, we don't actually all want, I have put photos up, but what we're keen, we don't actually, just want loads and loads of photos of Charlotte, and there will be stuff which I put up which, it is sometimes not particularly nice to read, and it is about cancer, but then cancer isn't very nice, so I feel that, I'd like to make people aware of the facts that I know.
Some of this will be horrible, especially when we get on to the last few months, but we're not going to sugarcoat it because Charlotte didn't.
No, not at all. No.
There's no point. I think we're both in favour of more candidness in these areas, because it is what it is. What is the point in omitting stuff?
Definitely. So Wednesday's video
request
time, I think, or we will find something.
Yeah, we can do either.
I was actually thinking of Charlotte's most irritating habits.
Yeah, a lot of those. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Charlotte's most irritating habits.
Yeah, there were quite a few actually.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Obviously follow on Twitter and Facebook, and hopefully see you Wednesday.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.